Phantom fans, and happy 2022. My name is Sam Olmstead. His name is Justin Irwin. This is the Dump and Chase podcast. In this episode, we'll look back on a 3-point weekend in Michigan and look ahead to hopefully a return to the Covelli Centre this weekend with the visiting Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. I say hopefully because both of Cedar Rapids' games last weekend were postponed due to what looks to be positive COVID tests showing up in their locker room. So Justin, speaking of positive COVID tests.
How are you feeling, my friend?
Better, but different. For anybody listening who doesn't know, I tested positive for the Rona last week. Unfortunately, the after effects of Christmas, I guess. My youngest son and my wife also tested positive, but my two oldest boys so far, they're negative, so at least thankful for that out of all this. For the most part, everybody's doing fine. A couple of really rough days there. I mean, at least thankfully I am vaccinated. So I guess if that was the worst of it, I'll take it. Because I can say that there are a lot of people on ventilators right now that I'm sure would have loved to have changed places with me in a heartbeat. So at least grateful that, it ended up being as short as it was. Now the only problem is, again, we record these on Monday. I woke up this morning and do not have a sense of smell or sense of taste at all. Like, it's not that stuff smells bad or stuff tastes bad. I smell nothing. I can taste nothing. And that has been severely messing with my head all day long. I'm starving right now and nothing sounds good because I can't taste anything.
Yeah, that's one of my worst nightmares with this thing. Yeah, I know relatives of people that I know who are fairly bad off right now, not on ventilators, but they weren't vaccinated. It is not going well for them. So obviously, get vaccinated. But yeah, glad that you are not, feeling any worse effects than the loss of smell or taste, but man, that sucks.
Yeah, it's like I said, it could be a lot worse, but now, of course, with all this going on, I will not be going to the games this weekend. I will be staying home, watching on hockey TV, bothering Matt during the intermissions, Matt Lipsack. No, so I won't be there this weekend, but you know what? If that's the worst of it that comes out of all this, then I will take it. So moving on from that, thank you everyone for tuning in. This is our 60th episode. So we've really been cruising along this season, been a lot more consistent this season we have been in the past. So we're all the way up to 60 episodes. And whether you're listening on YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, or on Western Reserve Radio. And this week, assuming that the games will be played, not only will this episode air in our normal slot on Wednesday at 5:06 on Western Reserve Radio, it will also air on Friday, 1 hour before the Phantoms live game broadcast starts. So for the second time now, will be Matt Lipsack's lead-in before the game. And also, I will bring up as well, whenever our show is broadcast on Western Reserve Radio, you can also find it on Western Reserve's Facebook and Twitter page and on the Youngstown Phantoms Facebook page. So numbers-wise, that's been a nice little boost for us. We are not going to overlook that, certainly. That's been a nice little windfall for us as far as viewers.
Yeah, we're talking about moving decimal points, so
yes.
We really appreciate the listens out there, and I don't even know what to say. It is kind of unreal.
Yeah. And we also wanted to talk about our amazing sponsor at Advanced Podiatry, who's helping us make a lot of things possible these days. If you decided to go out on New Year's Eve and, trip the light fantastic, and now your feet are swelling up like Jiffy Pop, get in touch with Dr. Ashdown and Dr. Carnivus at Advanced Podiatry. Go to advancedpodiatry.com to find a location near you and request an appointment. So Trip the Light Fantastic and Jiffy Pop. This ad read was definitely geared towards an older demographic and not on purpose.
Unfortunately, I got that.
Okay, so after the break, we'll dig into what was a pretty good week in Michigan and figure out what went right and what went wrong. And we're back. So last week, the Phantoms traveled up to Michigan, one game in Plymouth with the Team USA under 17 squad, and a trip to Muskegon with a game with the Muskegon Lumberjacks. Right off the bat, saw a little bit of a roster shakeup. Namely, Ryan Alexander, Adam Ingram, and Trey Taylor were out for both games last weekend. We can make assumptions, but at the same time, these are three of the Phantoms' Canadian players. So I don't know if this was a COVID issue or if this was a border issue. Coming off the holiday break, we really have no information either way. Just they were out of the lineup, which kind of stung a lot because this is, three of our top four leading scorers on the team.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of expected maybe there to be some issues coming out of the break. Not of this magnitude. And other teams had players coming back from Canada too, from tournaments that got canceled, and they managed to play. So it is kind of an awful coincidence, though. We'll have to see going forward if what is going on, if there's any lingering impact here. But hopefully after a week, there's no issues.
Although when the roster was released on last Thursday, we did get a couple of surprises. The return of William Whitelaw, who it turned out the Phantoms had for the entire weekend. So he was back for a couple games, which was a nice little surprise. We hadn't heard anything to this effect that this might have even happened. Reese Lawback, who was the Phantoms Phase 2 third-round pick in this past draft. So he's been on the affiliate list for the Phantoms. He came up for a couple games. And we got to see the debut of Tomasz Maciu, who now we have the proper pronunciation of. Funny enough, we brought him up last week. I did not have the pronunciation right. And on Tuesday, after I was done with all the editing for the episode, I had gotten a message from our good friend Matt Lipsack giving me the correct pronunciation and then saying it's probably too late, but here it is. And it was in fact too late. So, but yeah, we got that sorted out now. Yeah, so him making his debut in North America, I guess you could say. So, I mean, all in all, it was, you don't want to see three of your top four scorers out, but at the same time, three players we were very interested in seeing, all showing up on the roster.
Yeah, I think all three played well. Lawback, I saw no issues with his game. When you're playing on a line with William Whitelaw mostly, maybe it gets a little bit easier. I think, it was obvious the first game that we saw. He's going to be something special. He continued that, I think, with this call up. And I like Maciu based on the fact that he gets his first shift early in that game, pretty much crosses the blue line, looks up, says, hey, I'm going to launch this puck at the net. I don't think anything came of it, but, I kind of like that. Just get the puck towards the net.
He has a heavy shot, too. I mean, that was, you saw that right away. He's got a very, very heavy shot.
Yeah. You work maybe a little on the aim. His skating could probably use a little working. But has the enthusiasm. So, will be interesting to see.
All right, so we'll get into the actual game. So on last Thursday, the Phantoms traveled to Plymouth, like I said, taking on the U17 squad. So we'll go through the scoring recap here. The first period at 15:25, Youngstown opened the scoring. That was Evan Werner, his fifth of the season. That came from Winter Wallace and Maciu, which right away, right off the bat in his first period, picks up his first USHL point. Youngstown goes up 1-0. That's how they go into the intermission. Second period, Team USA's Alexander Weirmeyer, I'm going to go with that, picked up his fourth of the season on the power play, tied the game at 1. That's how it would go all the way to overtime. No scoring in the third period. In overtime, minute 27 in, TJ Schweigart splitting the defense, putting on a little bit of a deking display. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. Picks up the goal in overtime, the overtime winner for the Phantoms. That the assist on that was Varner and Bettens. Phantoms win 2-1 in overtime. Their second overtime game in a row, and that will come up again here in a second. Shots in the game, Youngstown, slight edge over Team USA, 25-24. Kyle Chavette in this game stopped 23 of 24 shots. So on the season, he is 9-5-3 with a 2.91 goals against average and a .904 save percentage. As far as the special teams, Youngstown 0 for 3 on the power play. The U17s were 1 for 5 on the power play. So the special teams for the Phantoms kind of letting them down a little bit in this game. They were able to do enough to win. And, everything we talked about as far as last week, I mean, yeah, the special teams are going to suffer, especially when you're missing Taylor, when you're missing Ingram, when you're missing Alexander, those things are going to suffer. So basically any analysis we gave last week, all bets were off with those three missing. But this was just a case of Youngstown just kind of buttoning down and doing what they needed to do to win. If those three were in the game, this game probably would not have gone to overtime. It would have been over a lot sooner.
Yeah. And I think the under 17s are kind of getting sick of getting the snot beat out of them. They played a little bit tighter. We stuck to it, and yeah, they got caught a little bit flat-footed. Schwegart took advantage. Again, we'll go more into that later. But I'll probably mention this at some other point in time. We are now 3-0 in Plymouth this year, 4-0 against the NTDP altogether. Do you remember any other year where we did that?
I can remember as having a good record against the 17s, where we might see something similar to that with the 17s, not the 18s. So
not getting a win in Plymouth against the under 18s to start the season. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's always the concern, because historically Youngstown has not done well in Plymouth, regardless of who they're playing. So to kick this season off, going 3-0 up in Plymouth, even if everything else hasn't gone right, that's, one part you can really look at as something that has gone very right for the Phantoms so far this season.
So, yeah, I will probably maybe mention that at another point.
Okay, so moving on to the game on Friday, Phantoms travel over to the other end of the state, taking on the Muskegon Lumberjacks. This game, the Lumberjacks ended up winning 3-2 in overtime. New Year's Eve game, kind of a celebratory feel in the crowd. So going into the scoring recap on this game, in the first period, only one goal at the 5:30 mark. That was Muskegon's Jacob Rossini, picking up his 11th of the season. So Jacks go up 1-0. Moving into the second period, at the 6:46 mark, Jaden Grant picks up his 11th of the season unassisted. Ties the game at 1 on a nice little play there in the defensive end. Not even 2 minutes later, Muskegon breaks the tie. Philip Tresca picks up his 13th of the season on the power play. Jacks go up 2-1. That's how the score goes into the third period. In the third period, at the 8:37 mark, Grant Porter, his second of the season on the power play from Centrilla and Whitelaw, tied the game 2-2. This was Whitelaw's second USHL point, not his first, like Muskegon's announcer pointed out. So I feel we should, correct there. I mean, it's right there on the score sheet, along with pronunciations of players' names. Maybe next time, just take a little harder look at that. I want to get into that, but I'm not going to. Yeah. So the game's tied at 2, goes into overtime. Kind of a very ticky-tacky call on William Whitelaw on a breakaway. And again, 4 points rolls around. We'll be talking about that. But Whitelaw takes a penalty in overtime. So Jacks go on the 4-on-3 power play. At the 3:51 mark of overtime, Quinn Houston picks up the game winner, his 13th of the season. And Muskegon wins 3-2. Shots in the game, Muskegon very well in hand out shooting Youngstown 43-30. Owen Bartoszewicz got the start in net for the Phantoms. He stopped 40 of 43. So on the season now, 1 win, 6 losses, and 2 overtime or shootout losses, with a 3.94 goals against average and a .868 save percentage. Although I will say I was very impressed with Owen Bartoszewicz in this game. This is probably one of the better games we've seen him play this season.
Easily, I would say it was probably the best. He made some pretty big saves. I think he was moving and tracking the puck a little bit better, battling a little bit harder. kind of earned us a point there. We were pretty badly outshot, outplayed at some points in time. I give Muskegon credit. They were missing some key players too, so kind of what you expected from the game. Pretty hard fought. We got out with a point, 3 out of 4 on the weekend. I'm not going to cry about not getting the second point there.
And then it comes back to, and we talked about this last week, but again, with players missing, but coming down to special teams, especially with Muskegon. Youngstown on the power play in this game, 1 for 4, Muskegon 2 for 2. This is a team with the worst power play in the Eastern Conference, and they were able to go 2 for 2 in this game. And again, right there's your, there's your difference of victory. So we're going to take a break while I pick my vocal cords up off the floor. I've been editing out a good bit of coughing. Well, not coughing, but throat clearing. So when we come back, we're going to break these games down point by point. Well, 4 points to be exact. Okay, we're back, and it's time for 4 points. This is where we break down the previous weekend into 4 categories: what we liked, what we didn't like, favorite moment, and weekend MVP. Now, last week, as a Christmas gift, I allowed Justin to go first, and quite frankly, I didn't care for it, so I'll be kicking this off. You got your one, be happy. All right, so starting off with what I liked, just overall the team effort this past weekend to compete in these games. When you're missing 3 of your 4 top scorers, it's that's been the problem for Youngstown this year. It's been a select group of players who's been putting up most of the offense. When those players are missing, it really makes it difficult. I think as a team, I really liked how they were able to pull together, and get, the 3 points out of 4 this weekend. So just overall team, they did what they needed to do, to get out of the weekend, what they got out of the weekend.
Yeah. I'll have to agree. I'll maybe expound on that later. One specific point for me, best part of the weekend, what I liked, going 3-0 in Plymouth. I told you I'd bring that up again, and yeah, getting that win against the under 18s, the last game before the break, coming out, getting another overtime win in Plymouth to coming out of the break. I've been following the team a long time. That made me really happy.
All right, let me ask this, because you, at least pre-pandemic, a little bit during the pandemic, for the most part, you'll make quite a few trips during the season up to Plymouth. Can you remember the last time they won up there? where you were sitting there in the crowd? Can you remember?
Before the pandemic, when I was sitting in the crowd, I'm trying to think.
So it doesn't happen too often, is the point here.
Yeah. The specific date, no.
And potentially you might be a jinx. That might also be a point here.
No, because I was at the first game this year. That was before the Delta wave.
Okay, so you broke the jinx then. Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as what I didn't like, and again, like we talked about earlier, the William Whitelaw penalty in overtime. He's on a breakaway, gets hauled down into the goaltender, gets called for charging. My question was, this looked exactly the same as earlier in the game when this happened with a Muskegon breakaway, which looked exactly the same as what happened earlier in the game from that, when a Youngstown player was hauled down and into the goaltender and nothing was called on either one of those two. Why in overtime do they decide to make a call there and not even call it on Muskegon for hauling him down, but calling Whitelaw for charging?
Yeah. I mean, you could have called that many different ways, and they did.
Yeah.
Again, we've noticed this, before. Sometimes players are just held to different standards, and I don't know what was going on there, but it is what it is. What I didn't like, I guess factors into that. We gave up 2 power plays to Muskegon, the worst power play team in the league, and we gave up 2 goals. That was a difference maker, and, we can make excuses as we like about players out. You got to batten down and stop at least one of those, I think.
Okay, so as far as my favorite moment of this weekend, getting the taste out of that out of my mouth.
What taste?
I would say, yeah. If I could taste it, thank you for reminding me that 2 of my 5 senses are lacking right now. So thank you for bringing that up.
You're not going to get any mercy out of me.
But no, my favorite moment, TJ Schweikart's overtime winner on Thursday. It's always fun to see a defenseman on a breakaway, but to see a defenseman split the defense on a breakaway,
and from kind of in tight too. I mean, that was high slot.
But he brings it in, goes from forehand to backhand, back to forehand, and then just neatly tucks it into the back of the goal with the goalie flailing around. It's fun to see a defenseman on a breakaway. Seeing him score on a breakaway in that manner, that was I think I went back and repeated that about 8 or 9 times, watching that over and over again. That was just such a fun goal to see on its own, let alone the fact that it was the game winner.
Yeah, and to add to that, to see 3 of the most gifted children in USA hockey standing there just watching him go right through them, mouths agape, I would assume, if they didn't have the cages on, was kind of satisfying. My favorite part of the weekend was the Grant Porter game tire against Muskegon. We were getting shelled at times, hanging in there. He ties it up, midway through the 3rd period. Got us a point there. He's one of those guys who's been out hustling, especially, in the absence of some key players. And, to see him score and get his 2nd, that was pretty nice. So that was my favorite.
All right, I'll ask this real quick. We got to see William Whitelaw at tryout camp. We got to see him a month ago when Youngstown played Chicago. So now we get to see him in a game with the under 17s. And just objectively, try to look at it objectively. I know that's hard because we're Phantoms fans, but look at this objectively. When you have the under 17s and William Whitelaw on the ice, in your opinion, who was the best 16-year-old on that sheet of ice in Plymouth in that game?
I would have to say William Whitelaw. And this is something we've been questioning, I know, for a while. But yeah.
I saw a U17 team tripping over their own feet, not very accurate with their shots, not even close to accurate with a lot of their passes. And you see William Whitelaw flying around the ice, having no trouble making passes. He's accurate on his shots. It's like his positioning is good. What were they thinking? I mean, it worked out for us. I'm not going to complain on that front, but just what was the development program thinking, letting him go?
I've heard other people's opinions on this. I'm not going to offer mine, but wow.
Okay, so moving on from that, my weekend MVP, I'm going with Jaden Grant. Did pick up a goal on Friday, and and it's just one of those games, you've got a good chunk of your offense missing, and it basically, you just kind of got to put your nose to the grindstone and just move forward, and that starts with him. He's the team captain. It's, say what you want, that everybody on the team is a leader in some way, shape, or form. He's the one with the C on his jersey. He's the one everybody voted for. He's the one the team is looking to. I think this was like the most solid weekend Jaden has had in the past month. Just everything he did had purpose. It was, like I said, it was solid. It's, I kind of think maybe he felt like he had to take it on his shoulders a little bit. And to me, he led this team in the way that it needed to be led for them to get the outcome that they got. So, for me, my weekend MVP is going to Jaden Grant.
Can't argue with you, really. I saw no individual player really that stood out. What stood out to me was the team effort, like you mentioned at the beginning of the segment. I'm going to say specifically this was a team effort on defense with, your offense decimated. They had to kind of buckle down and play a little bit better on defense, not let in as many goals as, sometimes we are tend to. So I'm going to go with pretty much everyone on the team for doing what they had to, kind of shore up the ship there on defense.
All right, and there you go. Good job there.
Okay.
That was pretty. That was pretty good. I might invite you back next week.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's take another break, and when we come back, we'll look ahead to this weekend and the visiting Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. And we're back. This will be kind of fun. It'll be kind of like a throwback to last season where we just make the assumption that games are going to be played this weekend. Fingers crossed. Yeah, so this weekend, the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders will be coming to town. These will be the 5th and 6th games the Phantoms have played against Cedar Rapids. The 4 previous games so far this season, the Phantoms, 1 win, 2 losses, and a shootout loss. Now, all this talk about postponements and everything else, last weekend, Cedar Rapids had games with Green Bay and Dubuque. Both of them were postponed. We're assuming COVID, some kind of COVID issue, just because it's the same blanket statement that was released all last season every time a game was postponed. So we're just kind of assume that's the reasoning here, especially with what's going on in the world right now. So if this game is going to be played, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, both games were on the road, so it wasn't like there was, an arena thing, or it mentioned that minimum standards couldn't be met. Kind of assume that means they don't have enough players.
Yeah, when the safety protocols and everything, it's the same statement we kept getting weekend after weekend last season. With games being shuffled around. So we're going to, at this point, I think it would be safe to assume. So assuming the games are going to be played this weekend, Cedar Rapids will be coming in with a record of 12-12-1. That's good for 25 points and 5th in the East. Youngstown sitting at a record of 10-11-5, also 25 points, but they're sitting in 7th. Actually, right now, Cedar Rapids, Green Bay, and Youngstown all have 25 points. Those 3 teams are sitting in 5th, 6th, and 7th place. You start getting into the potential point percentage thing they're going by now. Actually has Cedar Rapids and Green Bay tied, and Youngstown a little below them. Cedar Rapids on the season is averaging 2.96 goals per game. They are giving up 3.4 goals per game. Currently sitting with a negative 11 goal differential. Youngstown on the season averaging 3.15 goals per game, giving up 3.56 goals with a negative 7 goal differential. Special teams, Cedar Rapids on the power play, 19.2%. That is 7th in the East. Their penalty kill, 76.5%. That is sitting them in 4th. Youngstown on the power play, 22.1%. It doesn't feel like we're seeing that number change too much lately. It's been hovering right around there. Hasn't gone up, hasn't gone down. But 22.1% on the power play. That is good for 4th in the Eastern Conference. Penalty kill just keeps ticking down little by little by little by little. Currently at 69.3%. That is 7th in the conference. So both of these games, it will be a 7:05 puck drop at the Covelli Centre. Friday night is Sparky's birthday, so we're going to have mascots crawling all over the place, so have fun with that. It's also youth jersey giveaway night, and kids tickets for kids ages 12 and under will only be $8. The game on Saturday night is military night, also $2 beers up until halfway through the second period. And, throw something in here we've never thrown in before, and honestly, I don't know why. For ticket information for these games, you can call 330-747-PUCK. And for those of you that never got to live with the joy that was T9 texting, that would be 330-747-7825. Do you remember the joys of T9 texting?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
If you wanted an O, you had to smack that button 3 times just to get the O. It was...
If you wanted an S, 4. Holy.
If we still had T9 texting, I don't think you would see as much Discord on like Twitter and social media, because you'd really have to be angry about something to type out 288 characters on a phone with T9 texting. You would really have to have some rage. So I think a lot of the lazier opinions would immediately disappear.
Not just that, at 5 cents a text message over, 25, depending on your plan. I think you'd see a lot of that shut down.
Just obsolete phrases, call me after 9 when my minutes are free. Yeah, Justin, we got Cedar Rapids coming in, obviously playing a lot better than they were earlier in the season. I mean, what are your feelings on this weekend? Special teams, either way, isn't much to sneeze at, not much to look at there.
Well,
assuming the games are played and everybody's healthy, what are you looking at this weekend?
One thing that hasn't changed with Cedar Rapids is they like to take penalties, though.
Yes.
They have 93 more minutes than their nearest competitor in the league at one less game played.
We brought this up last week with the guys from Lincoln, because I believe it's the top 9 spots in penalty minutes is Cedar Rapids, and then is it all 8 of the Western Conference teams?
It's something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now. Muskegon is probably like in about 8th place, 9th place at the most. I don't have the numbers here.
So just by looking at the conference, how far ahead is Cedar Rapids of Muskegon? Just going by conference.
Just by going by, I only have minutes. Average.
Just how many more minutes? Rough estimate. You don't have to do the exact math here.
190. Yes, they average 4.5 more minutes a game than their nearest opponent. They average over 10 minutes more per game than we do.
Yeah.
Per game, 10 minutes. So if you ask me what's going to be the key, if we can stay out of the penalty box, because they're pretty high up in the league in opponents' penalty minutes, second in the league in opponents' penalty minutes, and we did notice that they did tend to drag us into their scrums a lot. If we can stay out of the box and capitalize on that, that'd be great.
Well, they are 4th in the East in penalty kill. But that may be just more of a case of quantity over quality.
Exactly.
So there might be something to that. Okay, so this will be our last break. On the other side, we'll preview next week's episode and wrap up our 60th episode here. All right, so we're back, and we want to thank all of you for listening in this week. Make sure to check out our archived episodes on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Last week, we had a great conversations with the guys from Thunderstruck, the unofficial Lincoln Stars podcast. And the episode before that, we had Phantom's president Andrew Goldman join us for the entire episode. So make sure you can go back and check those out if you missed them. And again, if you or someone you know is looking for help with your feet and or ankles, check out our great sponsors at Advanced Podiatry at advancedpodiatry.com, where you can find a list of their locations and services and request an appointment online. So for the episode next week, we will be recapping this weekend and look ahead to the Phantoms' trip to Chicago for 2 games with the Steel, because what could go wrong there?
You could have to listen to Mark Citron on the Hockey TV.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. All right, I'll be listening on mute. I have a couple weeks to prepare for that. But we are 500 against Chicago. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. We are like 500 against Chicago this season. So let's see what happens. So as always, the Dump and Chase podcast is brought to you by hockeyfan.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, as well as listen in every Wednesday at 5:06 on Western Reserve Radio and the TuneIn or Live 365 apps. The Western Reserve Facebook and Twitter page, the Youngstown Phantoms Facebook page. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, but easy enough, all of these links can be found in the description on our Linktree page. So for Justin Irwin, I'm Sam Olmstead. Thank you for tuning in, and we will talk with you all next week. Bye now.